My name is Kimberly Resnick Anderson. I am a certified sex therapist. It's my 31st year in practice as a sex therapist. And I'm an assistant professor of psychiatry at UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine, where I teach doctors how to discuss sexual issues with patients and how to gain comfort around taking sexual history, etc. So we're here today to talk about infidelity. And let me do slideshow. It'll be a little bit better. Okay, still see that? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So infidelity, there are many definitions out there. You may have your own definition. The definition I like is this definition. Infidelity is defined as any type of secret, emotional, sexual, or romantic behavior that violates the exclusivity that romantic relationships have by definition. Today, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about some statistics, recent statistics based on research over the last few years. It's mainly based on heterosexual relationships. I will be addressing a little bit about LGBTQ relationships, but most of the research I'll be sharing is based on heterosexual cis relationships. I'm going to be talking about some theories to explain why infidelity occurs, as well as some theories to explain different reactions to infidelity. I'm going to talk to you about some risk factors, things that make people vulnerable to extramarital or extra relationship contact. Then I'm going to talk to you about types of reactions. And I've come up with my own sort of list of 4 reactions that I tend to see, and I can categorize couples pretty quickly into one of those 4 categories. I'll be talking to you a little bit about treatment. What do we do if someone does come to see us and they're trying to recover from intimate betrayal? I'm going to be talking about challenges for therapists, because we have our own countertransference issues to manage responsibly and our own biases to be aware of. Then I'm going to talk about some clinical observations over my 31-year career as a sex therapist. So let's move on and start with some statistics. So a little more than half of cases where infidelity occurs lead to divorce. And if you work with couples, and especially couples recovering from intimate betrayal, and you have different clinical experiences or impressions, please feel free to type in the chat and share your perspective. This I find fascinating, and I also find it to be true in my clinical practice. About 70% of individuals regret cheating. So 7 in 10 people come to the conclusion that it was really quite a destructive act and wish they had not participated. By the way, I'll make my slides available too, so don't feel like you have to take notes. 6 in 10 cheaters believe that their partner is unaware of their affair. About 60% of married cheaters do not use protection or practice safe sex, which is a distressing statistic. And you may or may not know this, but 2 to 3% of children are the product of infidelity. Some more statistics for you. Almost half of people who participate in an affair who confess due to guilt. That is the motivating factor. About 4 in 10 confessed to let their partner know that they were unhappy in the relationship, and I like to refer to that as an exit strategy, because they assume or expect or hope that their partner will end the marriage. And then about 38% believe that their partner had the right to know. So I have feelings about this one. If we have time, we can discuss that. One-night stands are more common than long-term affairs. So about 1 in 4 affairs last less than a week, meaning they're a one-off or an outlier. About 65% of affairs end within the first 6 months. So that's the largest category. So it may not be a one-time thing, but it rarely continues beyond 6 months. And then only 1 in 10 affair becomes a long-term relationship. 44% of adults with parents who cheated are likely to cheat on their partners when they grow up, compared to only 22% of adults whose parents remained faithful. Now, this is based on the adult child's knowledge of an affair. Sometimes there's an affair and they don't know that it occurred, but when an affair is known to have occurred, it doubles risk for the child to have an adult later in life, because it just feels like an option, feels like something that people do, and it feels like something that, you know, if your parents did, how wrong can it be? So here's some more statistics. Non-religious people tend to have more affairs than religious people. Education has been shown to positively increase risk for affair, as well as higher income. People with more money tend to engage in affairs more frequently, and that may simply be because of their professional and personal lives provide them with more opportunities to be unfaithful. This is a very important statistic. This next one, about half of all those who engage in infidelity met their affair partner at work. I don't know if you see that in your practice, but I see that a lot. The other thing that I would add that I notice in my practice is that social media and Facebook provide the opportunity for people to reconnect with a first love or a true love from their past that sort of got away, and the ease with which they can reconnect can lead to an affair. So those are some statistics for you. Before we talk about sexual betrayal, I just want to state that there are many, many types of betrayal, and most betrayals are non-sexual betrayals. And we tend to really demonize someone who commits infidelity. But I just want you to think about and hold in mind that financial betrayal is a significant type of betrayal. I don't have a lot of time to go into each of these and give examples, but if you want to talk offline about what a financial betrayal might be, reproductive betrayal, so getting pregnant, trapping someone into having a child, or knowing that your partner wants to have a child, but secretly taking birth control, or having your tubes tied, or having a vasectomy without your partner knowing. These are deep, deep, profoundly painful betrayals that occur. Social betrayal, extended family, professionals, quitting a job, taking a job, stopping working without consulting your partner or giving them any sphere of influence. Obviously, drugs and alcohol, it's a type of non-sexual betrayal. And in my world, a sexless marriage, where one partner decides that they are no longer receptive to any sort of sexual relationship, is also a significant betrayal, sort of the opposite of an affair. So I just want you to keep in mind that there are lots of ways to betray our partners. But we're here today to talk about infidelity, so that's what I'm going to focus on. There are 4 subtypes of infidelity. There's overtly sexual, then there's emotional without sexual contact. Then there's what I call combined, which is both sexual and emotional. And then there's virtual infidelity, which happens online, and the parties never actually see each other in person. More and more virtual betrayal, the more and more we become slaves to our computers. All right, so I want to talk a minute about emotional infidelity. And people have, just like they have different beliefs and definitions about infidelity at large, people have different feelings about emotional infidelity. Here's the definition that I like: the occurrence of emotional involvement with a third party that violates the ground rules established by the couple. And this may be trusting someone other than your partner, sharing your deepest thoughts, or having a psychologically intimate connection, falling in love with another person, but not acting on it sexually, Being vulnerable with another person is a really big one. And for a lot of people, spending money on someone outside of your primary partner is seen as an emotional betrayal. Research shows that men, generally heterosexual men, tend to hold more permissive attitudes regarding what constitutes an affair, what raises to the level of cheating. Women tend to consider more behaviors as unfaithful compared to men in both offline and online spaces. So someone might feel like having lunch with someone and talking about your personal life is cheating, whereas someone else may say that's not cheating, you're crazy. That's just, you know, having a friend. Men tend to be more distressed when their female partners engage in sexual infidelity, while women tend to be more upset when their partners engage in emotional infidelity. This has been shown in, you know, oodles and oodles of studies. It's quite a commonly, you know, clearly proven reaction. But I have seen it be the opposite. So there are exceptions to every rule. And even within same-sex couples, there's often someone who feels like their threshold is higher or lower than their partner in terms of what constitutes betrayal. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some gender differences in terms of reaction to infidelity that are based on evolutionary sexology. So one explanation is that women are more likely to be affected by emotional infidelity rather than sexual because they carry the fetus and give birth. They're more threatened by the emotional betrayal because they count on a man to provide for the developing family. For thousands of years, women depended on men to provide food, shelter, and safety. And women may feel more hurt by emotional infidelity because it threatens their partner's commitment, which would in turn remove resources. Men, however, are more threatened by sexual infidelity because from an evolutionary perspective, they're never quite sure that a baby is theirs. Mother carries the child. There's no doubt that she's the mother. But for a dad, there's always this threat of, you know, protecting, feeding, and caring for someone else's offspring, which is sort of subconsciously, evolutionarily dystonic. And that we could go off onto the concept of cuckoldry, but we don't have time to do that today. So this gender difference explained through evolutionary sexology is referred to as jealousy as a specific innate module, or JSIM. And if you've ever heard of sperm wars, there's this sort of vulnerability that men have around being, you know, their partner, a woman being promiscuous or cheating on them, and them not knowing for sure that they are the father. I want to touch just very briefly on reaction to intimate betrayal from a trauma-based perspective. Many clinicians and researchers compare the harsh emotional pain experienced by victims of infidelity to the same attachment injury as an infant separated from their mother. Attachment injuries, as you know, refer to traumatic interpersonal experiences which violates an individual's internal representation of another as a trustworthy and reliable, secure base of support. Thompson talks about a deficit model of infidelity. And the theory is that when relationships are not optimal, and there's low satisfaction and high conflict and poor communication, that these variables are going to play a significant role in one's choice to be unfaithful. Like other models and theories, this particular deficit model sees infidelity as a symptom of deeper underlying relational difficulties. Selterman came up with 8 risks for infidelity. And the list goes on and on and on. There are hundreds of risk factors for infidelity, but I do like this list. Feeling angry at one's partner. I put 2 asterisks there because that's so common in my work that people are resentful toward their partner. And instead of dealing with it directly or handling it in a way that is productive, they will act out by having an affair. Oftentimes wanting more sex than is available in the relationship is also a primary motivation. Wanting more intimacy and love than is available is also a significant predictor. Having low commitment, wanting greater autonomy, having clouded judgment due to situational factors such as stress or depression, feeling mistreated or neglected. I put 2 asterisks there because I find that to be compelling in my work. And wanting a greater number of sexual partners. When it comes to straight men, when I talk with them about why they engaged in infidelity, they'll say that there are things that they wanted to do, sexual things that they wanted to experience that they don't feel like they could have done with their partner or initiated for fear of being shamed or judged, or because they feel like their partner would be offended. And you probably have heard of what's called the Madonna whore complex. A lot of men, when I speak to them, we come to this as something they're sort of not aware of consciously, but once I explain it, they're like, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was feeling. There were things I wanted to do, but I didn't want to, dirty up my spouse. And so this would suggest that some men believe that particular sexual acts are dirty or wrong, and they see their wife as more wholesome, up on a pedestal like the Virgin Mary, and see a sexual affair partner as the Mary Magdalene figure who's willing to engage in the fun, hot, raw, raunchy sexual behaviors. So I want to talk with you now about the 4 reactions that I have witnessed over my 30 years treating couples with infidelity. Number 1 is the automatic deal breaker. Now, these couples never come to me because they've gone straight to an attorney. They don't come to me because it's over, not negotiable, there's nothing to discuss, and there is a percentage of couples for whom infidelity is it. That's it. There's nothing to discuss, and they're out. So instead of calling me, they're calling a lawyer, and they are not pursuing treatment. Understandably, these aren't the couples that I'm working with. The second category are the couples that I call the I'll try, but ultimately they just can't move past the betrayal. So they see, so here's my wolf in sheep's clothing slide. So for these couples, they try, they think that they owe it to their marriage, to their children, to their family, to their community, to their faith, to see if there's a way to heal and repair. They are confused. Should I stay? Should I go? If I leave, am I making a mistake? If I stay, am I making a mistake? And it's just a very, very ambivalent experience, but they do decide to try to heal, and they do come to therapy, and they try to process the pain, and they even try at times to reinitiate sexual contact, but it feels like the affair is the elephant in the room. No matter what they do, it's just sort of floating in the air. And eventually, even though they tried and really wanted to unturn every stone to see if there was a pathway, they come to the conclusion that there's too much damage done and they're unable to reconcile, and they end up splitting up. So that's category 2. Category 3 is the most concerning and clinically frustrating category. These are the couples that stay no matter what. They're staying together, and wild horses can't drive them apart. And the reason this is concerning, and I think it's great that people are loyal and choose to stay together, but if they're not changing the dynamic in any sort of fundamental way, if there are no second order changes, if they're just engaging in the same relationship that they were in before without understanding the deeper issues, without taking inventory of their own contributions, if they're not gaining self-awareness and insight into their part in the relationship, nothing really is going to be different, and the risk factors for someone cheating are going to remain the same or increase. So with these couples, there's a strong pull of loyalty, and you see that magnet and the different characters there that might represent their faith or their kids or their extended families. And sometimes people choose to stay based on values that are very, very healthy. And I'll talk about that when I talk about category number 4. But this category number 3 is I see men and women sort of on their knees, begging for forgiveness, but not really willing to do the work to make any fundamental changes. They may continue to feel monitored, or like they're in the doghouse. I treat men and women who, after admitting to an affair, under duress, agree to a high degree of being monitored to the point where they're not able to leave the house alone unless they're going to work. They are accompanied to the grocery store. They are accompanied on errands. Sometimes they're not even allowed to be in a room with the door closed, including the bathroom, because sometimes women who've discovered infidelity are so worried that their partner, now with the ease of cell phones, you can take your cell phone in the bathroom, you can look at porn, you can secretly message. And so I actually have worked with plenty of couples for whom privacy is completely removed. And there is a significant difference between privacy and secrecy that I don't have time to address today, but we're entitled to privacy. We're not entitled to secrecy. And for couples in this category 3, it's blurred, and they're not, they're together, but they're not getting healthier. So that is unfortunate. There are women who describe what is referred to in the literature as mate guarding, where after they've been unfaithful, their partners will sort of track them. Where are you going? When are you going to be home? So jealousy increases, possessiveness increases. And so what I tell these couples is that if you change nothing, nothing will change. So a good chunk of my practice involves these couples who are in this stay together no matter what category. My favorite category of couples to work with are the ones that I call the transcendents. These are the couples who do the hard work, who over time actually make second order changes, they heal, and they do regain and rebuild trust. And I say this often, and people sort of look at me with surprise, but I think if the couple is able and willing to do the hard work, they can end up with a stronger marriage after an affair than they ever would have had an affair never occurred. Now, this is not an intervention that I recommend. Just go have an affair and then you can have a stronger marriage afterwards. But if and when it occurs organically, it can be an opportunity to really create a highly evolved partnership. Sometimes for these couples, there's a reset button, a starting over. They might move to a new place. They might move to a new town. But they do sort of start anew and create a 2.0 version, because the first relationship is dead. And the relationship 2.0 is the one that they are going to participate in moving forward. It's highly gratifying to work with these couples, because you can see that that eventually there's a blossom or a bloom where things previously had been shattered. So I want to talk to you a little bit now about treatment. I don't know if any of you are Gottman providers, or if you work with the Gottman method, but I have a number of approaches that I incorporate. But today, for purposes of time, I'm going to talk about Gottman's trust revival method that has 3 phases: atonement, attunement, and attachment. And I am a sucker for alliteration, so I love that alliteration as well. So when it comes to phase 1, atoning, there's no way to rebuild without the acting out partner's willingness to admit what they did and show expressions of remorse, and not once, but over time. So Gottman has broken it down into 6 sort of steps. There's confession, which I'll talk more about in a moment. Then there's actual behavior change with transparency and verification. Then there's the deep dive into what went wrong. Then we explore the cheater's reason for return. We identify a high cost for future betrayal. And then we do the heavy lifting emotional work of beginning to forgive. So once an affair is revealed, often referred to in my world as discovery, there's a formal process of disclosure that occurs, and it is not for everyone and not indicated across the board. But when couples want to stay together, which they often don't know for some time whether they do or don't, and if their commitment is rock solid, then going through a formal disclosure process can be very powerful. I've facilitated hundreds of disclosure processes, and it's always an honor to bear witness to and facilitate that work. When it comes to taking responsibility, I've come up with 3 levels of accepting responsibility. So the first level may seem obvious. I did it. But I have treated individuals, men and women, who will literally refuse to acknowledge, in spite of compelling evidence, that they engaged in some sort of extra relationship contact. So I worked with a couple, and the husband had an affair and recorded it on his cell phone. Not a great idea, because, you know, his wife found it. And in the video, he could see she could see her husband with the tattoo of the dragon on his shoulder and his bald spot, which was very recognizable and unique, having intercourse with a woman. And she showed it to him, and he said, I don't know who that is. That's not me. That's not me. I don't know what to tell you. So literally, in the face of recorded evidence, some people will still deny that they engaged in extramarital contact. So when I say level 1 is I did it, you'd be surprised how many people are unwilling even to get to that first level. Number 2 is important. It's not only so go back to number 1 for just a second. Sometimes people will say, you know, I did it, but lots of excuses. I did it, but I was drunk. I did it, but it was peer pressure. I was at a bachelor party. I did it, but an evil alien came down and, took over my body, right? Being hyperbolic. But number 2 is not only did I do it, I'm the woman, I'm the man who did that, but I knew exactly what I was doing. It was a volitional act. I chose to do this. And a lot of people can get to number 1, but they can't get to number 2. They'll say, I did it, but blah, 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 blah. So being able to say I did it and I knew what I was doing, I chose it, and it was intentional is very therapeutic and necessary for both the cheating partner and the non-cheating partner in terms of moving forward. Then number 3, and this is actually the hardest level to achieve in terms of taking accountability, is yes, I did it. And yes, I knew exactly what I was doing. And I will gracefully accept the consequences. Doesn't mean you have to like the consequences. Doesn't mean you can't have feeling about the consequences, but you must gracefully accept the consequences. And if the consequences are a separation or a divorce or no sex for some period of time, or I'm going to tell your mother or your kids, which may or may not be a healthy thing to do, the unfaithful party must gracefully accept the consequences. And that is very hard and takes a lot of work to get to a place where you're able to do that. So let's move next now to attunement. We talked about atonement. Now we're going to talk about attunement. This is where the couple learns to handle conflict in a way that it doesn't cause flooding or overwhelm and create new distance. As part of this new commitment, the couple goes public to those closest to them and establishes a new relationship. And Gottman takes the word attune and cleverly breaks it down into awareness, turning towards each other rather than away from each other, being tolerant, having compassion and understanding and empathy for your partner, even the partner that was unfaithful. I have no trouble finding empathy for people who engage in infidelity. Good people cheat. And there's no global sort of scarlet A legacy that I think has to be in place. And then empathy for both partners back and forth, for yourself and for your partner. Okay, when we talk about attach, this is when we start to reincorporate a physical or sexual component into the relationship. It may take quite a lot of time to get to the comfort to reincorporate sex. I've developed my own protocol called the Comfort Inducing Sexuality Dialogue, which you can read about on my website if you're interested. It's just KimberlyResnickanderson.com. And it's just talks about my values and beliefs about sexuality and the role it plays in relationships and the role it plays in therapy. There are challenges for therapists, and like Megan Kane so appropriately shared in her presentation before me, not everyone should be doing this work. It's a challenging, complex dynamic to recover from. And here are some challenges for therapists. We as therapists are human. We have countertransference. We have our feelings and our values and our biases about cheating that are informed by our life and our history. And we may over-identify with one partner or the other, and that will hamper our neutral position and our objectivity. So it's extremely important that you are aware of your own clinical biases if you're helping couples recover from these sorts of difficult situations. And our personal attitudes toward infidelity clearly influence our treatment decisions. I saw a couple last week, and they went to see a therapist before coming to see me. And in the very first, literally initial session, the therapist said to the woman, "You have to leave. Like, you can't stay in this relationship." Within 30 minutes of a first session, unethical, irresponsible, unprofessional. They're coming to you for help. They want to explore reconciliation. It's not your place to say whether they should or shouldn't stay together or do that work. So they didn't go back to her. They came to see me and shared that story. And I, told them that I understood why they didn't feel safe. So it's not our place to say whether someone should stay together or not should stay together. There are nuances, and we can identify pros and cons and risk factors and vulnerabilities and concerns that we have for the individuals and the couple, but it's not our role to say, should you stay together or split up? As therapists working with this population, we need to strike a balance between addressing the needs of both partners and not just one, while exploring the underlying causes of the affair. We must be at least trauma informed, if not an expert in intimate betrayal, in order to establish trust and forgiveness between the partners and help them heal from the emotional injury, which many think is similar to a form of post-traumatic stress disorder that can lead to hypervigilance, flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, and a sense of unsafety. I'm working with a couple right now, and every time they attempt physical sexual intimacy, she has intrusive visions of her husband having sex with his lover. And she gets very dysregulated. She's tearful, and it's very traumatic for her. So we've decided that for now, they probably shouldn't be engaging in sexual intimacy until she can get some support for her trauma symptoms. Irvine and Peluso they did a lot of research on therapists who work with couples who are recovering from intimate betrayal. And they identified some specific variables in terms of the competency of the therapist. And they say that the training that the therapists receive directly impact the competency for those working with couples dealing with infidelity. They identified 4 variables that were correlated with the highest levels of comfort, preparedness, effectiveness, and confidence when treating infidelity in a therapeutic setting. Number 1, they felt their research showed that therapists who had attended specific infidelity training were much better equipped to help couples than therapists who don't attend specific training in infidelity. And like Megan said earlier, just because someone says they do ketamine-assisted therapy doesn't mean they're qualified or trained to do so. And I don't think you should see a couples therapist who doesn't have some, provable, ongoing, specific training in infidelity, because we can do harm, and we do harm. Therapists who've been licensed for more than 16 years are better equipped, more comfortable, and more effective working with couples who are healing from intimate betrayal. They did find that therapists who hold a doctoral degree are more qualified than those with a master's degree. And they found that therapists who were licensed to practice marriage and family therapy were better equipped to handle this than a generalist. I would throw sex therapists into that mix as well. Irvine and Peluso also identified traits in the couple that negatively affect recovery. And one biggie that I've experienced is when the cheating partner continues the betrayal while the couple is in therapy. This is particularly undermining. And, if you're not, sometimes people go through the motions when they're doing recovery from intimate betrayal, but their heart really isn't in it. The only way for it to be successful is to shut down the extra relationship contact. And if a person is not willing to do that, then I don't think therapy is indicated. And I will say that because you can't have two masters, and you got to close the window to the affair partner and open the window to your primary partner. An unwillingness to commit to therapy, so wishy-washiness or ambivalence about it. Well, how long is this going to take? I don't know if we can afford this. I don't really believe in therapy. These sorts of things highly correlate to a poor outcome. If the partners are stuck in the cycle of continual blame, and that they can't get past the resentment. So let's say a woman is unfaithful, her male or female partner keeps talking about that, and then the woman that was unfaithful keeps talking about how, well, you ignored me, or you neglected me, or you put your family over me, or you did that. As long as people are throwing those barbs back and forth, the chance of them healing and transcending is low. And then resentment towards each other without forgiveness, similar to number 3. Forgiveness is really important, and it's hard to get there. But I have had the pleasure of helping hundreds of couples overcome the intimate betrayal. And if they're able and willing to do the hard work, it is just so gratifying and powerful to see them on the other side of the betrayal. So I do have a quote on my wall that you can't see, but it says, one thing, over the years, I've witnessed every which iteration you might imagine in terms of people staying and leaving and regretting it and being glad. So I see couples who stay and then they regret it. They'll say, I wish I had left 10 years ago when you cheated on me. It was a mistake to stay. You don't, I gave you my best years and you don't deserve it. And I was a chump for sticking around. I see people who leave and regret it. I see people who leave and then say, I miss my family, I miss my life, I miss the rituals and traditions of having a family and an extended family. I don't like being single, or my affair partner turned out to be a real jerk. And it was the biggest regret of my life. And if I could do it again, I would stay. Remember early when I showed you some statistics, 70% of people regret leaving after an affair. Some people stay and are happy because they did the hard work and they're in that transcendental category where they're truly in a healthier spot, both individually and as a couple. And then some people leave and are so happy and don't look back and are just tickled pink that they're out of a situation that they felt was unhealthy. Anybody want to guess which one I see most regularly? I can't see if anybody's raising their hand, but what I see most regularly are number 2 and number 4. People who leave and regret it, and people who leave and are happy. But I see all. So I have a sign on my wall that says what's mentionable is manageable. That's actually a quote from Fred Rogers, from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's my motto. And if you can talk about it, you can get through it. So I would encourage couples, if they're working together, trying to heal from intimate betrayal, that they should each have their own individual therapist, and that should happen before the couples work, or at the very least concurrently to the couples work, so that they can have their own support person and be reflecting on their own values. So I'm going to stop sharing. And if there are any questions or comments, we have a couple of minutes at the end that we can talk about. Doesn't look like there are. Does anybody have anything that they would like to ask? Raise their hand. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? I was busy unmuting myself.
Sure.
So the part where you talked about taking responsibility, I'm just curious from your personal experience, because my experience has been that sometimes the partners wonder rather to hear, like, he did that, it's his fault, I'm blaming him, he begs for forgiveness, but he was drunk. Sometimes what I've observed, that makes it easier for the other party to swallow, rather than the person say, yes, I was drunk, but I fully knew what I was doing. Because also we don't know. I mean, if he was drunk, his judgment was affected. So
correct. Absolutely. Good point. If he was drunk, his judgment was impaired. But he made a decision to drink. And so that, there are boundary crossings. Any kind of sexual betrayal is not chapter 1, it's chapter 12 or chapter 6. So there are a number of boundary crossings that make us vulnerable to crossing other boundaries. And yes, I'm not super hung up on, the one who cheated is, the bad guy or the bad woman and needs to be in the doghouse for life. In fact, I have empathy. I've never met a cheater that I didn't have, compassion for and empathy for. And that's why I said there are many ways to betray. And we tend to identify sexual betrayal as like the, big daddy of betrayal and the most egregious thing. I think financial betrayal, I think reproductive betrayal, these are, equal,
huge,
not more egregious and aggressive betrayals. And there's always, a mix, a combination of dynamics. That's just, it's a symptom of a complex dynamic. So yes, I hear you. If someone is drunk, yeah, then I'm not gonna, say, well, you were drunk and you got drunk, admit it, and you have to do this and mea culpas.
Yeah.
But I think, it's a slippery slope, and I think each
Yeah.
couple, has to go through their own, sort of make their own contract and find their own comfort level. And sometimes, people don't want to know. Sometimes the non-cheating partner doesn't want to, have that information. And sometimes what they imagine is 10 times worse than what actually happened. And if it's a one night stand versus a 10-year, affair, all these things are going to have different meaning to different people based on their values and their resilience and their resources and their support system. And so I'm not one who thinks that cheating must be a deal breaker. In fact, I think if you can stay together, that's probably better. But sometimes people can't stay together. So, Marianne? Any other?
Lori Eisenberg has a question in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. I currently have a couple in my practice with an emotional betrayal. The betrayed partner keeps saying, I want a grand gesture to indicate remorse. Yes. And a commitment to not repeat. Thought she has difficulty defining what the grand gesture means, but that was homework this week. Yeah, yeah. So grand gestures are often expected. And also, you have to do whatever I say for the rest of our marriage because you're the asshole. So, every fight we ever have, I win because you did this one horrible thing. So, you can't ever redeem yourself. You'll never be as noble as I am. That's that category 3 couple that they stay together no matter what. And if someone's going to be tortured for the rest of their life, I do advise them to consider leaving because, if you can't move forward and find some healing, and you just want to torture your spouse for the rest of their life, then that obviously is not a healthy situation. But a lot of times grand gestures, renewal of vows, a new ring. Okay, now you have to give me another baby because you cheated on me. Or now we have to move into the more expensive house because you cheated on me. Or things like this. These are the sorts of grand gestures that sometimes are demanded. And I think it's tricky and needs to be managed with a lot of clinical skill.
Scott Harris has raised his hand.
Okay.
Hi, Kimberly. This is a two-part question. What's the average length of the couples therapy that you provide? And then also, if one of the partners wants to see you in individual therapy as well as the couples therapy, what's your kind of protocol for that?
My protocol is I never agree to do that ever under any circumstance. And there are providers who have of different mind and they do it. And it's not inherently, well, it's not unethical or illegal, but I think it's a powder keg of conflict of interest. So that's my answer on that. Now, if the couple splits and one of them wants to see me for individual treatment, I will agree to that. Sometimes when they split, they fight over who gets me. And they both want to see me individually. And under those conditions, I'll either see neither of them or we negotiate which one I can probably be more helpful to, which one would benefit from my particular skill set, as opposed to the one who could probably be more helped by a wider, number of therapists. So that's how I handle that. Also, when I do couples work, I don't see them like this week, I'm going to come alone without my partner, unless there's a compelling reason. And sometimes there is a compelling reason, and also never without the partner's consent and knowledge. So that's that. And like I own that. I'm very respectful of boundaries. There are plenty of highly competent therapists who do it differently, and no judgment here. That's just my particular protocol. And then in terms of how long it lasts, you know, a wide range, from, you know, category 2, the ones that try, but they ultimately split because it's just too hard. I see a lot of those, and they last, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5 sessions. And then it's clearly evident that it's more than one of them or both of them can tolerate. So they split, and I don't see them anymore. I see some couples for years. And I would say the average would probably be about 5 or 6 months.